Hi, my name is Sophie. I want to tell you a story from my life, one that changed my whole understanding of relationships. It all started about a year and a half ago. I was at a friend's party in Austin, and he showed up there, Jake. I can't explain what exactly attracted me, but at that moment he seemed to me the most charming person in the world. He smiled, listened to me, and said things that made me feel special. We started dating, and in the first months everything was like in a fairy tale. He brought flowers for nothing, made little surprises, called more often than I expected. He said that I was a rarity, that I hadn't met such a girl for a long time. But there was one strange thing: he almost never invited me to his house. Every time I found a reason: repairs, disorder, busy schedule. It seemed like he was avoiding showing his personal life. I attributed it to his busyness and indecision. And everything was fine, at least, that's what I thought. A few months passed, and I became more and more immersed in our relationship. But something started to bother me. Jake didn't introduce me to his friends. He always said they were busy. He always kept his phone with him, even when we were together. Sometimes he would quickly hide the screen if I happened to look in his direction. One day he forgot his phone at my house. A message from a girl with a heart appeared on the screen. I didn't read any further, but I remembered the name. I haven't been able to get that thought out of my head since. After a couple of days, I decided to find this girl on social media. And I couldn't believe my eyes. There was a photo of her hugging Jake on her profile. They were smiling as if everything was perfect. I felt like someone had stabbed me in the heart. Who is she? How long have they been together? Why didn't I know anything? I couldn't forget that photo and name. But what to do next? Should I write to her or not? What if it's a mistake? What if they're just friends? In the end, I decided. I texted her, "Hi. I think we have a mutual friend, Jake. Can we talk?" She answered quickly and agreed to the call. Her voice was calm, but there was sadness in it. She told me that they had been together for over a year, and that Jake had never told her about our meeting. We were both deceived. I realized that I had become that other one. That he told each of us different stories. That our feelings are part of his game. It hurt, but it also opened my eyes. The three of us decided to meet, me, her, and Jake. We wanted to hear his explanations. It was a difficult meeting. Jake initially denied everything, saying that we misunderstood the situation. But we showed him the evidence, correspondence, photographs. He couldn't deny it anymore. He said he loved them both, but he couldn't choose. I realized that I can't go on living like this. I left this meeting with a heavy heart, but with the feeling that I had made the right choice. I decided to start over. The few weeks after the breakup were difficult. I felt empty, angry, and doubtful. But gradually she began to return to herself, to her interests, friends, hobbies. After I left Jake, it felt like the whole world had collapsed. It seemed that I had lost a part of myself, the one that believed in love and sincerity. But one day I woke up and decided that I didn't want to live like this anymore. I started with small steps. First, I signed up for yoga. There was an amazing atmosphere there, people who come for harmony, peace, and strength. This was my first experience when I started listening to myself instead of thinking about the past. The time I spent on the yoga mat gave me the opportunity to realize that I can be happy with myself, and this feeling gradually began to grow inside me. My friends were always there for me, even though I didn't immediately turn to them for help. It seemed to me that I had to cope on my own. But one of my best friends noticed that I had become withdrawn and often sad. One evening she called and just said, "I'm here if you want to talk." We sat for hours. I told her everything: fears, pain, doubts. And then I realized how important it is to have people around who I can trust. It was a real support that helped me not to drown in negativity. One day I sat down to write in my diary. At first, the words came with difficulty. It was scary to look deep into yourself. But gradually, I began to describe not only the pain, but also my dreams, desires, and who I want to become. Writing helped me rethink what happened and see the situation from a different angle. I realized that what I had experienced was not the end, but the beginning of a new stage. This process became a kind of therapy for me, which brought me back to life. It's been a few months. I started going out again, attending various events, meeting new people. These were different meetings, some superficial, others interesting conversations and friendships. I realized that the world is big, and there are so many opportunities in it to meet a person who will appreciate and respect me. But sometimes the past reminded me of itself. I still got messages from Jake, brief, sometimes apologetic, sometimes just empty. Every time I thought, should I answer or not? And she always decided to keep quiet. I realized that in order to move on, I need to leave the past behind. And stop waiting for someone who is no longer worthy of my attention. I started reading more about psychology, relationships, and self-development. It helped to understand why this happened, and how not to repeat mistakes in the future. Each new book or article provided small insights that gradually formed a new picture of my life. I started to feel stronger and more confident. One of the most important discoveries for me was the realization that true love begins with self-love. I began to take care of my body and soul. I ate right, played sports, and took time to rest. It changed not only my mood, but also my attitude towards life in general. Over time, I realized that I needed to forgive not only Jake, but also myself. For trusting me too quickly, for turning a blind eye to the signs. Forgiveness freed me from the burden of resentment and allowed me to move on with a light heart. It wasn't easy, but it was very important. Now I look to the future with hope. I know that new meetings and new stories are waiting for me ahead. I'm not afraid to open up to people, but I already know how to set boundaries and appreciate myself. My story is not about betrayal, but about how I was able to become stronger and happier. I realized that no one can decide for me how to live and whom to love. Only I can choose my own path. Now I am free from the past and ready to create my life the way I want it to be. And this is the most important thing. After I started to recover, it sometimes seemed like the whole world had become empty and meaningless. Everything seemed to be moving forward, but I was stuck in one place. It was scary to think about the future, because for so long I had trusted a man who was not what he seemed. Every morning I woke up feeling anxious, with a heavy heart and a lot of questions in my head. Why did he do that? Where was I that I didn't see the obvious? These thoughts haunted me everywhere. But I understood that to get stuck in the past is to betray yourself, and it motivated me to look for ways to move on without losing hope. Life has taught me to appreciate small joys: morning coffee, sunlight through the window, a sincere smile from a friend. These were not just moments, but pieces of light that gathered my broken soul. I began to notice how the world around me was gradually changing, not because of anyone, but because of myself. I started setting myself simple goals and enjoying achieving them: reading a book, going for a walk, talking to a new person. These small victories have become a real support for me. Sometimes the past came back unexpectedly, in the form of a call or a message from Jake. Every time, my heart started beating faster and my mind was filled with doubts. I knew that answering these calls could destroy my fragile peace, but it was still difficult to restrain myself. One day, after receiving another message, I sat down and answered myself honestly. I'm not the one who waits. I'm stronger than that. It was the beginning of my final victory over fear and pain. Over time, I began to realize that relationships are not just about love and romance. It's also about respect, trust, and honesty. I realized that you can't build a relationship on lies and secrets. Now I just wanted someone who would be real next to me, without masks and games. This new perspective has changed my whole perception of love and friendship. After everything that happened, I began to realize that I had lost not only my love, but also a part of myself. And to become whole, I need to get that part back. I started doing what I had left behind, drawing, writing, dreaming. These classes helped me not only to distract myself, but also to reveal new facets of my personality. But the fear of opening up to someone again lived in me. I was afraid to repeat the mistake, to be deceived again. Every new encounter with people caused an internal protest. What if there is pain again? And she allowed herself to walk at her own pace, taking her time. Despite my fears, I began to notice moments of joy, when I was laughing with friends, when I was listening to my favorite music, when I was just walking in the park. These little pieces of happiness gave me strength and reminded me that life goes on. I've learned to appreciate such moments and allow myself to be happy, even if it feels small. I've expanded my social circle. I found people who didn't condemn, but supported. It was easy to talk about difficult things with them, share thoughts, and just be yourself. It filled my life with the light and warmth that I've been missing lately. After everything that happened with Jake, I often asked myself the question, who am I really? Not just a girl who loved and was devoted, but a man with his own dreams, fears, and hopes. It took me a while to stop looking for confirmation of my worth in other people's eyes and begin to understand that the real power is inside myself. I started writing down my thoughts in a diary, trying to figure out what I really want from life. She wrote not only about pain, but also about small victories, for example, how she was able not to answer Jake's call, or how she spent an evening with friends without thinking about the past. These recordings have become a real therapy for me, helping me find my voice and accept myself. Fear is a powerful force. In the first weeks after the breakup, he seemed to paralyze me. I was afraid to trust people, afraid of making mistakes again, afraid of being rejected. It seemed that the world around them had become dangerous, and every new acquaintance could hurt. But one day I realized that fear shouldn't rule my life. I decided to stop avoiding new opportunities just because I'm afraid. At first it was difficult. I forced myself to get out of my comfort zone, communicate, and build new connections. And you know what's amazing? Every time I overcame my fear, I felt myself becoming stronger and more confident. Fear was no longer my enemy, it became a signal that I was growing up. In the period after the breakup, I needed silence, not only externally, but also internally. I turned off my phone, avoided social media, so as not to see other people's ideal lives, which only increased the feeling of loneliness. This silence was like taking a deep breath. She made it possible to hear her own thoughts, feelings, and understand what was going on inside. In the silence, I discovered layers of pain that I tried not to notice, and I began to release them gradually. Every day the silence brought more peace to my soul. This was an important step towards healing and self-acceptance. When life seems to have stopped, the simplest advice is to do something. For me, such steps were walks in the park, short meetings with friends, and engaging in my favorite hobbies. Every little step filled me with confidence and faith that there was something better ahead. I stopped waiting for big changes, realizing that it was in the small things that a new life was born. These small successes have taught me not to give up, even when it seems that everything is against you. One of the hardest tasks for me was to forgive. Not only Jake, but also myself for letting myself be deceived. Forgiveness was the key that freed me from the burden of resentment. I realized that holding a grudge means holding yourself captive. Forgiveness gave me the opportunity to let go of the past and start living in the present. It was a difficult process, but it made me stronger and wiser. Looking back, I realized that my previous ideas about love were idealized. I thought love was always about romance and happiness. Now I know that true love is about respect, trust, and being yourself around another person. This is not a perfect fairy tale, but a daily work on relationships and yourself. This new perspective has helped me become more mature and prepared for a real relationship in the future. One of the important changes in my thinking is the rejection of the ideals that I created in my head. I stopped waiting for the prince on a white horse or the perfect partner. Now I see that every person is a complex person with their own flaws and fears. And the task is to find someone who will be there for you in difficult moments, not just in happy ones. This understanding freed me from unnecessary expectations and made my relationship more real and honest. One of the most valuable things I've learned is the ability to say no. I used to be afraid to refuse, afraid of losing a person or disappointing them. Now I understand that self-respect begins with respect for one's boundaries. Saying no is not rude, but self-care. This skill has helped me build healthier relationships and not let others take advantage of my kindness. After a long period of internal work, I began to discover new possibilities for myself. It was a time of trial and error, when I boldly went beyond the usual. I signed up for courses, started traveling, and meeting new people. It filled me with energy and inspiration. Each new discovery brought me closer to the person I wanted to become.
The most important thing I've learned is the freedom to be myself. Without masks, without trying to please others, without fear of judgment. I've learned to accept my emotions, desires, and needs. It gave me a sense of inner peace and harmony. The freedom to be myself has become a real gift for me and the greatest achievement after all that I've been through.